now to 2019, the year he shot his last buck, and I wanted to, talk a little bit about that. And I know that year in particular, next year I got my biggest buck. We hunted together a lot actually that year. It was pretty much the two of us going in the woods and going back and forth trying to find locations. And where we hunt up there is, there's about 3 or 4 stands that are close together, and every time you're sitting in one of those stands, you question whether, oh man, I should have been over there. The deer, it's a crazy thing. But just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that in the last deer that you ever killed.
Yeah. All right, so again, this deer was way up top in that single stand. So I don't know, I forgot when it was. It was probably late October.
Yeah,
I think it was late October.
Late October, early November.
I don't know. It was actually a really beautiful night that night. So I was seeing deer. I must have saw 30 deer at least, and I saw a deer walking up on the ridge. So I was like, okay, it's probably a buck, So I got the grunt out. I was like, I'll just mess around with it. So I threw out a few grunts. He looks up. He turns around. He starts coming towards me. He's working that edge, and I'm like, oh, this is actually a pretty nice buck. He might be a little beat up, but he's pretty wide. He looks pretty big from the stand. So I just kept grunting at him. So he'd go to a tree, he'd rub it and make a little scrape, do his business, and then this is really cool. This is probably the best experience I've had hunting, because I was really working this deer. Like I was calling him.
It's fun.
He was answering back. Oh, he was answering back. He would, he'd rub his tree. He'd get his business going. He was doing the whole works. So that was like a 30 to an hour process of trying to get him called in. And he's finally coming towards me. Again, he's walking directly at me, so I don't have a clear shot. He gets underneath me, he stops, shoot, it goes right over him. So I'm like, oh great, like this is perfect. I was like, he's not gonna stop, he's gonna take off, he's gonna run away. So he's running about, I don't know, he probably stopped like 25 yards broadside. So I get another arrow out, but it has the Rage Broadheads, the ones that open up, mechanical ones. So I'm like, all right, well, this is now or never. So I whack him, perfect shot. The Rage Broadhead just opens him up. He is leaking like crazy. He probably ran like 30, 40 yards and dropped him. So, but yeah, that was the craziest experience I've had hunting, because I was just calling that deer and working him in. He was responding back. It's definitely very eventful, very fun time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's always nice when you're calling in a nice buck, and it's a whole different experience than when they just show up.
Exactly.
And you see them for a while, and you got to work and call them in, and very rewarding. I think, like you said earlier in the conversation, how every fishing trip, every hunting trip outdoors is different. There's some things that happen the same, but there's a lot of things that are very unique to every single time that you're out there. I know for me, the older I get, I appreciate those little differences. And it makes me, when you're sitting out there hours in the stand or putting that time in, you have to have the right mindset. Number one, to be able to kill a deer, to harvest it. If you're not paying attention, you're not ready. There's chances that you're not going to get that buck, but also just to appreciate the little things, like the fox that you keep seeing, and the weather and the trees, the area, all that stuff is God's creation.